Most prisoners that try to escape get captured after being on the run only briefly. Most people go on vacation longer than prisoners manage to escape out of the hands of the authorities. Just ask Glen Chambers, if you can find him, that is, or if he's still alive. Chambers, who killed his girlfriend in Sarasota, has not been seen for 33 years after escaping, or 4 times longer than the average marriage lasts. Though Chambers' prison break in and of itself is impressive in a Netflix kind of way, the act that led him there in the first place is despicable. On January 22, 1975, Chambers assaulted 21-year-old Connie Weeks in the parking lot of Sarasota Lanes, a bowling alley where she worked as a server. Chambers went to jail. Weeks bailed him out. They went back to the Sarasota apartment they shared, where Chambers attacked her again. He carried her into Sarasota Memorial Hospital with severe brain trauma. Her blood was found in their apartment and in his car. She died 5 days later. Chambers was sentenced to death on July 11, 1975, and was being held in the Sarasota County Jail. 2 days later, he escaped down a rope made of bed sheets. 3 days after that, he was captured and eventually sent to Polk County Correctional Institution. For years, he was a model inmate and earned a job making furniture. On February 21, 1990, he placed himself in a wooden box that was loaded onto a truck to be delivered to Daytona Beach. Somewhere along Interstate 4, when traffic was at a crawl, he popped out of the box, opened the back door of the truck, and walked away. No one has seen him since. Chambers had a few things going for him. Back then, there was no digital fingerprint. It was much easier to obtain a fake ID and start a new life. Chambers also learned to speak Spanish in prison, and his IQ was on a Mensa level. Over the years, tips have come in from as far away as New Zealand, yet nothing concrete. Chambers would be 71 now. It is possible that he is still alive. He has not been arrested since the escape, as his fingerprints would have turned up in an ID system. Basically, he just vanished. Keep your eyes peeled. If he is still alive, he is living life as quietly as can be. Killers who escape prison and then go undetected for 3 decades generally don't kill again. Maybe he is among us. Remember that older gentleman you saw pushing carts at Publix the other day? How about the nice old-school crossing guard you waved to? Or the guy on the beach with the metal detector? Or the guy you nearly hit with that drive on 18? Any of them could be the person who killed Connie Weeks in Sarasota in 1975 and then jumped out of a furniture truck to become one of the most determined escapees in the history of American crime. After all, he did have a tattoo that said, "Live free or die." Killer and drug dealer Glenn Godwin escaped from Folsom State Prison in 1987 and years later also managed to run away from a jail in Mexico. He is still on the run to this day. Godwin, who was on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list for 20 years, managed to escape a California prison through a 1,000-foot drain pipe, and his escape had similarities with that of the protagonist of Shawshank Redemption. Glen Godwin ran away from Folsom State Prison, a maximum security prison located around 20 miles northeast of Sacramento, becoming one of the few prisoners who managed to escape in the jail's 124-year history. In 1980, at the age of 23, the criminal and his roommate, Frank Soto, who lived in Palm Springs, California, plotted to rob local drug dealer Kim Robert LaValle. Godwin and Soto lured LaValle back to their home, where Soto held him, while Godwin punched and kicked him, eventually stabbing the victim 26 times with a butcher knife. The two roommates then loaded the body onto a truck and set off to the desert, where Godwin tried to disguise the murder by using homemade explosives strapped to the body. But on August 3, 1980, some Eagle Mountain residents found a blown-up pickup truck with human remains inside, and, after police identified the body, Godwin was charged with first-degree murder. Following the killing, Godwin's roommate, Koto, who described him as the most dangerous man I have ever met, testified against him, but in 1982 he was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. The following year, Godwin was sentenced for the murder and robbery to 26 years to life in prison. In 1987, the killer was transferred to Folsom State Prison in Represa, California, after attempting to escape Duell Vocational Institute, which is now closed, in San Joaquin County. But Godwin managed to run away from the maximum security prison on June 5, 1987, after cutting through security bars inside a walled prison yard and then escaping through a drain pipe that was 1,000 feet long. Authorities believe that either Godwin's wife or his accomplice, Lorenz Karlik, had left a raft that the criminal used to float down the river, where he ditched his prison clothes and followed painted arrows on rocks that directed him where to go. After the prisoner's escape, Carlick, who was also a former prison escapee, was arrested in Hesperia, California, and convicted for aiding Godwin's escape. Carlick hanged himself in the Los Angeles County Jail in 2002. The escapee's wife, Shelley Godwin, was classified as a federal fugitive in January 1988 for her role in her husband's escape. She was captured by the FBI in Dallas, Texas on February 7, 1990. Meanwhile, Godwin evaded authorities and escaped to Mexico, where he was involved in the drug trade, but was arrested in Puerto Vallarta and later convicted for drug trafficking in Guadalajara. While serving time at Jalisco State Penitentiary, he killed a fellow inmate who was part of a Mexican drug cartel. The new murder allegation delayed Godwin's extradition to the U.S., and this gave him time to plot another prison escape, which eventually happened in 1991. It is not clear how he escaped the Mexican jail, as authorities did not share detailed information with U.S. law enforcement. FBI Special Agent Dan Rodriguez said, "We didn't get any detailed account from the Mexican prison. What we have kind of speculated at this point was that he was able to make some cartel friends down there, so in exchange for committing a murder within the Mexican penitentiary, they would assist him with an escape out of that prison." In 1996, Godwin was added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list, and the following year he was reportedly seen in California, but managed to elude authorities. In 2016, he was removed from the 10 most wanted fugitives lists as he no longer fit criteria, the FBI's website says. A reward of up to $100,000 is offered for information leading to Godwin's arrest. American authorities think Godwin, who the FBI believes is fluent in Spanish, may be involved in the illicit drug trade somewhere in Latin America. Mr. Rodriguez said, "Any Spanish-speaking country would be ideal for him because he's a pretty charismatic guy and he always knew how to communicate and relate to people. But there is also speculation that he may be using some assumed name or alias and live in the U.S., with the FBI often receiving tips saying he may be in the country." Located on a lonely island in the middle of San Francisco Bay, Alcatraz, aka The Rock, had held captives since the Civil War. But it was in 1934 that Alcatraz was refortified into the world's most secure prison. Despite the odds, 36 men tried 14 separate escapes. Nearly all were caught or didn't survive the attempt. The fate of 3 particular inmates, however, remains a mystery to this day. Frank Morris arrived at Alcatraz in January 1960 after convictions for bank robbery, burglary, and other crimes and repeated attempts to escape various prisons. Later that year, a convict by the name of John Anglin was sent to Alcatraz, followed by his brother Clarence in early 1961. All 3 knew each other from previous stints in prison. Assigned to adjoining cells, they began hatching a plan to escape. Morris, known for his intelligence, took the lead in the planning. They were aided by another inmate, Alan West. On June 12, 1962, the routine early morning bed check turned out to be anything but. 3 convicts were not in their cells: John Anglin, his brother Clarence, and Frank Morris. In their beds were cleverly built dummy heads made of plaster, flesh-tone paint, and real human hair that apparently fooled the night guards. The prison went into lockdown, and an intensive search began. As the days went by, the FBI, the Coast Guard, Bureau of Prison Authorities, and others began to find more evidence and piece together the ingenious escape plan. They were aided by inmate Alan West, who didn't make it out of his cell in time and began providing them with information. It turns out the group had begun laying plans the previous December. Using crude tools, the plotters each loosened the air vents at the back of their cells by painstakingly drilling closely spaced holes around the cover so the entire section of the wall could be removed. Once through, they hid the holes with whatever they could. Behind the cells was a common unguarded utility corridor. They made their way down this corridor and climbed to the roof of their cell block inside the building. More than 50 raincoats that they stole or gathered were turned into makeshift life preservers and a 6x14-foot rubber raft. They also built wooden paddles and converted a musical instrument into a tool to inflate the raft. The ceiling was a good 30 feet high, but using a network of pipes they climbed up and eventually pried open the ventilator at the top of the shaft. On the evening of June 11th, they were ready to go. West, though, did not have his ventilator grill completely removed and was left behind. The 3 others got into the corridor, gathered their gear, climbed up and out through the ventilator, and got onto the prison roof. Then they climbed over the fence and snuck to the northeast shore of the island and launched their raft. What happened next remains a mystery. Did they make it across the bay? get to Angel Island and then cross Raccoon Strait into Marin County as planned? Or did the wind and waves get the better of them? Plenty of people have gone to great lengths to prove that the men could have survived, but the question remains, did they? The FBI officially closed its case on December 31, 1979, and turned over responsibility to the U.S. Marshals Service, which continues to investigate in the unlikely event that the trio is still alive.